Okay.
Good idea.
Okay. So why first understand why do we use the Lightning Wave component and why we need that? Because in Salesforce, everything can be done on the Salesforce platform. But for the Lightning Wave component, we do it in local machine, and then after that, we upload it in the Salesforce. All right. So to implement LWC, we need VS Studio Code. So first, I would advise you to everyone to install the VS Code. Then it would be easier for us to go forward. Okay. All
Yes, sir.
right. Okay. All right. So let me first introduce what should be the curriculum of our course. First, we will learn about the concepts of Lightning framework. So here we will learn about event handling, we will learn about system events, we'll learn about development with JavaScript, using Salesforce data and classes with LWC. And finally, we will learn coding and implementation of real-time scenarios. Okay. And also we will learn about Lightning data service. Okay. So first, can anyone tell me what is the use of Lightning framework and why should we use the Lightning framework? Do anyone have that idea?
Lightning framework is a open source framework. Basically, it's a
Okay,
subtype
see,
of Aura.
see, Lightning framework is not an open source framework. You can
Okay.
say the LWC framework is a open source framework, but that is still limited.
Okay.
It's not the complete open source framework. Aura is the framework which is supported by Salesforce only. So the source of Aura is Salesforce, nothing else. So it's not an open source framework. Okay. So for Lightning components, what do you use to have the Lightning components? It's basically to maintain the UI part. So we take the data, we process the data, and the processing logic will be in the Apex classes, which is in the backend. And once the data processing is done, we will show the output. So taking input and showing output is nothing but the EY things, right? So this is done by Lightning components. So initially, when the Lightning components was not there, it was done by Visualforce pages. Okay, but the problem with Visualforce page was the loading time is much higher than Lightning component, because Visualforce page is server-side page. So whenever you refresh a page, it will go to the server. You will take the most recent updates and it will refresh the page. Understood?
Yes.
So what happened in Visualforce pages was, let's say we have some input. Let's say we have an calculator implemented on VF pages initially. So here we take input 1 and input 2. Then it will go to an Apex class. Then we will perform the operations. Logics will be there in the Apex classes. And finally, we will display it in the Visualforce page. Okay. So here, when you give the input 1 and input 2, it will contact Salesforce server to process the data using the Apex class. So Apex class, everything, account configuration, so everything will be stored in the Salesforce server, right? Correct? So whenever we take the input 1 and input 2, we will process it to the Salesforce server. So from that server, the Apex class will be executed, the operations will be performed, and based on that, we will display the output in the Visualforce pages. We take the input, we pass it to the server will do the operations. Again, we print it in the, we display it in the Visualforce page. So that's what the architecture was. So which means it every time to implement anything, it would take us to the Salesforce server. And to contact with the server, it always takes a higher time. So the loading of the page is more, it was more in the VF pages. Understood?
Yes.
Okay, so Srivani, you understood? Hey Srivani, I think you are on mute.
Yeah, yes, Soham. Yeah, I understand the topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we will understand what does Lightning components do. So can anyone tell me what is a cache? So what do you mean by cache? Anyone has an idea about it? Okay. So cache is a temporary storage which holds most recently used data as per architecture to ensure higher performance. Okay. For example, let's say there is a container 1. Again, there is container 2, container 3, and so on to container 10. Okay, so this is our initial container, and this is our final container. Okay. Okay. So here what we are doing is we are taking things from each container and we are storing it in the final container. Okay. So once the final container is complete, I mean, it's completely full, we will replace by the next most things of the container. Let's say final container is full and now we have to place, and now we have to take a thing from container 3. So that thing will be replaced in the final container. So that's what our idea is. So initially, let's say from these 10 containers, we are taking things from each container, and it is seen that the container 3 has the most of the things which are frequent. Okay. So let's say we have filled the final container for 20 times. From 20 times, the container 3 itself has 10 times. We have taken 10 things from container 3 and we have taken 10 things from the rest of the other containers. Okay. So now once the, let's say initially the final container is full. So each time we take a thing, we will push it in the final container, and one thing, whatever it is already there in the final container will be popped out. Understood? So this is the basic consideration we need to take to go further. So is this clear to everyone?
So can you explain one more time?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the thing is, let's say the final container is completely full. Okay, so we need to leave one thing from final container, and we need to take one thing from any container and put it in the final container. Because if it is full, then we cannot fill it up. So we need to take out one thing from final container to make space for the other thing, and then we take another thing from the container 1 or container 10 or container 2 and place it in the final container. So this is the basic consideration. So is this clear to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Suraj and Praveen, is this clear?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So every time what we are doing, we are taking things from each container and we are placing it in the final container. So that's what we are doing every time. So how can we improve the performance here? So as part of experiment, it is seen that the most of the things is coming from container 3. Okay, the most of the things are coming from container 3. So here we have a temporary container which will store the things coming out from most frequent container. So here that container is container 3. So in this container, we will store the things of container 3. Okay. So let's say if something is missing and we need to fill out the final container, and if it comes from container 3, so it will directly communicate to temporary container before going to all other containers. So if it is already present, it is taking that thing from temporary container and placing it in the final container. If it is not present in the temporary container, then only it will go to the other containers. So it's an improvement of performance. Understood? So Shivani, is it understood?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So Suraj and Praveen, is it understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Suraj, is it clear?
Yeah, it is clear. Yeah. So please go ahead.
Yeah. So this temporary container is actually the cache. So whatever data is most frequently used, we are storing that data in the cache to improve the performance. If that data is not present in the cache, then only we will contact with the server to get the data. So that's how the Lightning components are working. So whenever a Lightning component is fetched and loaded, it will store the data in the cache. So what is that cache? It is our browser cache. So whenever we open a Lightning component in our browser, there is a browser cache which will store the most frequently used data. Okay, so let's say we want to show some output based on some particular input. So all those data, all those historical data will be stored in the cache memory.
Cache memory.
So which will enable us to improve the performance so that we do not need to contact with Salesforce server every time. We can store the result in the cache. So whenever the input is given, we will contact with the temporary cache, client-side cache, which is in the browser, and we will find out the output. So if the data is not there in the cache, then only we will go for the Salesforce server. So which means the performance is way better now because the contacting time to server is becoming less by using the cache. So is that clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Srivan, is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. So that concept of cache, concept of storing data in browser cache or client-side cache is known as Lightning Data Service. Or LDS. For example, let's take one scenario. We need to find out a contact details based on contact name. So, so whenever we search by a contact name, all the details of that contact name will be shown. All right. So here, the name will be taken as input. Search method will be in the Apex class. Then after the search, the details, the contact details will be displayed in the component. Okay. So how this will work? So whenever we take the input name, it will call the Apex class, and based on that name, the output will be generated. And after that, so whenever we contact with the Salesforce server, which means we contact with the Salesforce Apex class, the Apex class will process the inputs and provide the output based on the search input. So whenever we get the details from the Apex class, all the details will be stored in the browser cache. Okay, so let's say the input is Suraj. So we are searching the contact whose name is Suraj. Okay, so now Apex class will generate the details of Suraj. And after that, When the details of the Suraj is generated, it will be stored in client side cache, which is the browser cache. So now after that, the Suraj will be able to see his details. Okay, so now the thing is, whenever the next time when Suraj will search his name, it will directly contact with the client side browser cache,
Okay.
where the Suraj details is already saved in the browser cache. So now Salesforce will directly contact with the browser cache. It will find that, yeah, the details of Suraj is this, and it will give that output. So here in the next time, we just eliminate the Apex side server call. Okay. So for the first time, we stored the result of that in the Apex in the browser cache. And from the next time onwards, we even do not need to contact with the Salesforce server to run that Apex class. It is already stored in the browser cache. So that's how the performance is improved in the Lightning components, be it in Aura or be it in LWC. So I believe this is clear to everyone, but still I will be writing. So this is for the very first time. From second time onwards, we give the input Suraj details will be fetched directly from the client cache, client side cache or browser cache, where it's already saved. So now, any doubt on this? Anyone have any doubt on this? So Srivani, is that clear why we use the Lightning components?
Yes, sir.
I have a small doubt actually.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
this is clear enough, but what if the client or someone delete the cache, and then again the same process will follow?
Correct.
Because this is saved for temporary
Correct.
time.
Right. So if the cache, let's say you are searching with Pravin's data. So now in the cache, Pravin's data is not present, right? So
Correct.
if it is not present, it will contact with the Salesforce server.
Right,
okay.
right.
So it will take the
So-
data of Pravin and save it in the cache. So from the next day onwards, it don't require us to visit the Salesforce server.
Right, right. So cache is also taking some memory, right, from the
Of
whatever
course, yeah,
storage.
correct.
So does this hamper any I mean speed or
It
whatever
is
it is?
using your cache, your browser cache. It is not
Okay.
the cache from Salesforce side. It is your browser cache. So whenever you opens a browser, your browser has a cache limit. Okay. So whenever the cache limit is reached, let's say we have, let's say for example, we can store only 3 people's data in the browser cache. So Silvani's data is saved, Pravin's data is saved, and Suraj's data is saved. So now if we need Soham's data, So much data is not saved and the cache is full. So in between three data, so whose data is least frequently searched? Let's say Suraj data was searched for 10 times, Pravin's data was searched for 20 times, and Srivani's data was searched for 30 times. So from them, Suraj data was searched for least frequent time, which is 10, right? So Suraj data will be replaced by Soham.
Okay, got it.
Understood?
Yes, got it. Clear enough.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the main advantage of using the component-based framework. Okay. Okay, all right. So if you open a Visual Studio Code, let me open it. Let me check if I have. Okay, I don't have it right now. Okay. So when you install the Visual Studio Code and you will create a new LWC component. So in LWC component, there will be 4 main files. One file first is .html, .js, and .css, and there is one more file .meta. Okay. So in HTML, we will write all the input output functionalities. And okay, so give me 2 minutes. Okay, just give me 2 minutes. I'm coming. Okay, so in HTML, we will write all the input output functionalities. Then we will take the data and we will pass it to the JS file. So in the JS file, the operations logic will be there. So how to handle the data and what to be done with the data. And then finally we get the output in the JS file and we will again pass it to the HTML to display the output. So again, there will be .css file, which will enable us to include the style sheets as well. So those things will be there in .css file, and the meta will have the information about the component. So what is the version of the component and where we should use the component. So all those details should be there in the .meta file. Okay, so any doubt till now? So this is understood. What are the files included in the LWC component during the development?
Yes.
Okay. So it's actually the XML file. So it's better if we write meta.xml. Okay, so I believe every one of you knows about the HTML, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's write an XML file, sorry, HTML file. Let's say we have created a new component whose name is LWC1. Okay. So can you tell me which files this component will having? What are the files this component will have? Can anyone tell me? So, okay. So this component will have these files. So these extensions will be started with the component name. Understood?
Okay.
Yeah. So let's take an example with a HTML file. Let's say in this HTML we have written this code. And remember one thing, that all the HTML file will start from this keyword template. Okay. And let's say here we are writing just div. So it's a tag of HTML. I believe every one of you knows it. It's a div tag.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we are having a paragraph over here. And again, a new paragraph, which is message. Okay. So let's now talk about the JS file. So this is a very important example. If anyone has any doubt, just let me know. Okay. So in the JS file, we need to import some library. And this is a library which we have to import from LWC. So what is it? LWC is a library, and we are importing the lightning element from LWC. So lightning element is an interface which is present in LWC library. So we are importing that interface from LWC. Is it clear to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So